Hey everybody, Cone here. Welcome back to Automation. You've read the title. You know what's going on. You know something stupid's about to happen. Let me just defend myself real quick, okay? I'm the parent of a young child. I'm up late in the night, early in the morning, and sometimes there's just too much time to think, okay? And I had the thought one night, what if Porsche, instead of making the 924, which was a collaborative effort with Volkswagen to make a more entry-level sports car, what if instead of doing that, they used more of their in-house powers to make a 911 backwards? Meaning using the iconic flat six and putting it in the front of the car to make it as front as the 911 is rear. That's the challenge I've set myself up for today. I am going to try to make the backwards 911, a flat six in front of the front axles, powering the front wheels in a 2+2 entry-level sports coupe, and we're going to take that out and see if it is as absolutely horrible as it sounds. All right, I've done a little bit of research, done a little bit of digging at this point, and I think I have chosen a body to use, and it is this one right here. So I want to try to stay pretty close to what the 924 ended up being, but instead of going the route of using a VW engine in a front-rear setup, we're going to try to go for more of like using a VW body with more of the Porsche engine. I have no idea if this is going to fit or not. I've been doing a little bit of fiddling, and we'll just have to see. So the 911 was a 2.4 meter wheelbase. This is a 2.5 meter wheelbase, which will give me plenty of room to try to do what we're doing. So we're going to be aiming for that Porsche sports car mentality, but something that's a little bit more approachable for people, like the 924 was. So we're going to go with steel on the panel material, just a plain monocoque chassis, steel on the chassis material there as well. We're going to go front longitudinal to try to make this as front as possible. The front suspension will be a McPherson strut, and the rear suspension, since this is going to be a front-wheel drive car, we're going to go for a simple torsion beam in the back. I had put a placeholder engine in this just to make sure it would possibly work, but we need to actually make the Porsche 2.7, which is what I am going to be basing this engine off of. This will not be a complete one-for-one like build, but we're just going to aim for something that is similar in weight, proportion, and horsepower. There is, of course, no air-cooled engines in Automation, but that doesn't really play too much of a factor here. Alright, so our Boxer 6, we're going to use an aluminum heavy block on here. That's not entirely accurate, but it's as close as we're going to get to the aluminum finned but powdered iron block that you're talking about with an air-cooled flat six that the Porsche 911 was using in the era. It's going to be a 90 by, I believe it's 74? Or is it 70.4? Yeah, 70.4. That must be right. 2.687 or 2.7 liters. That looks right. It is overhead cam, which is 2 valves per cylinder, and we'll do an aluminum head as well. Again, just to keep the weight somewhere in the ballpark of what that finned aluminum style engine would be. As far as the bottom end stuff goes, I don't really have any great information here, nor do I have the pedigree to have that information. So I'm going to just do whatever it needs, basically. So we'll start with cast, and we'll move on from there. If it needs better pistons or conrods or whatever, then we'll give it better pistons or conrods. The big factor here is, does it make the power that it should be making? I do know that these engines were running 8.1 compression ratio, and that they made their power at about 5,700 RPM, so 6,200 RPM limit would be more than enough. We are sticking with the naturally aspirated engine, of course, and these are going to be using we'll do a mechanical fuel injection setup. Kind of hit or miss there. Some of them were moving on to electronic fuel injection at this point as well, but the mechanical fuel injection is error correct and should do us just fine. We will do a performance mid. That looks the part, I would say. And I don't think we need to run on anything other than just regular unleaded in this. Since this is going to be pretty much poverty spec of this engine, we'll just do a cast mid manifold on there. We don't need a catalytic converter just yet, and the mufflers we'll deal with on another day. The horsepower of this thing should be in the around 150 horsepower range, so is that number... Sorry, this is a newer version of automation than I'm used to, so I just want to make sure I've got enough exhaust on there. Exhaust, airflow, 61 pounds. This used to give me, like, how much horsepower can this exhaust handle, and it doesn't quite work that way anymore. But if we go to flow, then we can see if the exhaust is big enough or not, which it clearly is. Out of the gate, it's making 138 horsepower, which is maybe a little short of what I want, but we got plenty of tuning to do. I think we could probably get the power figures we want if we used the per cylinder configuration on the mechanical fuel injection, or even... Actually, the single point EFI isn't really an upgrade. It's probably closer. That Bosch system that they were using in this era is... It's just a crude EFI, basically. And... yeah, neither of those are really going to get us there. Like I said, the per cylinder would get us there, but that's not very accurate. So let me look for some other avenues. There, we got our dialed into 148 horsepower, which is on the money at 4,700 RPM. Or sorry, 5,800 RPM. 148 foot-pounds at 4,700 RPM, which is a little short of the numbers that I'm seeing, but the numbers of this era are also super incorrect because they were measuring engines not with all the accessories on them. Not that there's a lot of accessories to an air-cooled Porsche, but still, those numbers are vague at best. But that should be pretty darn close, I think, to what we're looking for. Let me look at the weight of the engine. 339 pounds. To the Googles! Google says they weighed about 400 pounds. So it looks like we need to actually go for, I would say, the cast iron block would get us there. Shouldn't rob us of any power. 391. That should be just fine. All right, we have an engine. We have a body. Let's go ahead and work on getting the car built out before we start working on styling. We're going to go front-wheel drive, manual. I'm trying to think. I think by this point, there's 5-speed transaxles available. It wouldn't be super common, but I think it would be available. I think, though, I'm going to go for the 4-speed just because this... If you look at early 924s, they're pretty crude. They don't have a lot. They were pretty underpowered and pretty basic, so I think we'll try to stick to that metric. Open differential up front. As far as the wheels go, we will go with radials, and we'll go with a... we'll say a medium compound. We've got a 195 and a 200 on the back, which is a weird tire size. In 14s. When it comes to brakes, we'll do vented discs up front with just one piston. We'll put as much as much rotor as we can on there. In the back, we'll do a solid disc with just that one piston. And that should be plenty for a car this light. The under tray, we'll do semi-clad. We'll say they do just the bare minimum of cladding there. It is a 2+2, and we will go for, I think the sport interior fits the bill with a standard 8-track player. We will do a hydraulic rack and pinion on this car for its, somewhat more modern handling characteristics. And we'll do a standard safety on there. Weight distribution, we'll come back to you later. Springs, I think we'll do standard. We'll do gas monotubes, and of course, passive sway bars. And we'll do a sport preset to get us started. Looks like we are scoring in light sport budget and fun premium family sport pony budget. So those are scanning. That doesn't sound too bad, but of course we have a ton of tuning to do here. I really like it when default values just work, just like this gearing setup, which pretty much just worked out of the gate. As of right now, it's looking at an 8.4 0 to 60, 0 to 62, which is, I would say, fair for the era and would be considered sporty. if not fast. We can actually take a huge chunk of that out, though, by lengthening that first gear, giving us some more traction off the line. So we let that go out to 44 miles an hour, which is going to be hell on the clutch, but it will really help it get off the line. And we can get that down to a 7.3, which is pretty fast, honestly. So let's bring that into a more reasonable area, somewhere around, I would say, 38 miles an hour is about the fastest I feel comfortable with. And it's right at the point there where it kills the 0 to 60. So we'll put it at 39. Let's look under the hood real quick. Yeah, that's not really what we had in mind. The engine is between the front wheels. That's just logical. We can't have that. No. We must go to fixtures and go to advanced trim, and we must move that engine. All right, brain, work this out. It's going to be the Z-axis. Nope, that's up and down. Damn it, you knew this. you knew this. I knew why, but I still doubted myself. Here we go. Further. Look what it's doing to these CV axles. Further. Is it poking out the nose? It is not. Okay. That is where this engine is going to live. So we are going to have trunk space behind the engine, in between the front wheels. This is a front car. Now that's not going to change our weight distribution at all. That the game doesn't know we've done anything weird there. But by nature, this car is very front heavy. We put a 400-pound flat six in the front of this car, and just by the nature of it not having anything going on in the back, it is very front heavy. All right, 2350, 61% front, 39% rear. That's right in line with the whole situation I was hoping to create here. So I think now it is time for me to basically just give this car a design. Make it look like a spiritual cousin to the 924. All right, after a couple days of tinkering with this design, I think I've come up with something I'm pretty proud of. I tried to stay as true to the 924s, I keep wanting to say 944, the 924's styling as possible, while still being a unique design. So this is in just a different world, a different universe where Porsche lost their marbles and went front with their entry-level sports car. So on the front end, we've got the engine right at the front bumper. This, of course, being represented as an air-cooled engine. We got the fan driven by belt, right there at the front of the engine. And I've gone ahead and finned the engine block so that it is just right there to catch all of the air coming towards the front end. And then a vent on the hood in order to get rid of that hot air that would be heating this front frunk. A front frunk. It's a separated hood area, so you would imagine this part opening up clamshell and this part opening up, I guess, regular? That's how I'm going to say that it would open up in my mind. So this part would open up a normal conventional hood, and this part would open up clamshell. I think that would be pretty neat, which would mean this car would have a ton of storage because this is a large hatchback design. I also tried to extend the roofline out to give the 2+2 as much headroom as possible to make this a usable 4-person car. So you would have some frunk space and a huge amount of hatchback trunk space. Pretty functional design. I really like this sunroof prop that someone made, so I just had to throw it on there. I think it looks super era correct. And then as far as the rest of the body goes, pretty subtle. We've got the plastic bumpers, which are pretty common for this era. On the rear, we've got the little bumperettes. And then a rear end design that's okay. It's as good as I could end up doing with this body. It's fine. But I'm really proud of the front end design with the subtle lip and just the fixtures, I think, really sell this design very well as entry-level Porsche. I'm very pleased with what I came up with here. Inside, we've got a nice, simple, late 70s, early 80s style interior with pretty much just the basics, as this car should have. I did also make the pop-ups version as well, so that we can see what it would look like with pop-ups up. I don't know. You tell me, would the dual headlights, like the two small round headlights, be possible in 76? I don't know my dating on that kind of stuff there, but it certainly looked pretty cool. So the only thing I need to do now is set the camera positions so that we can go into BeamNG and drive it. I'm very anxious to see if this would be an absolute nightmare or an absolute delight. All right, so let's set this in here. If you haven't played automation in a while, this is a amazing feature that has been added, and that is that you can set the driver's camera and it gives you a preview. You should always snap to grid when you're, or snap to angle when you're doing this, because it makes it easier to get it to 90 degrees. But it shows you what your view is going to be as the driver, which is really, really handy. So you can scoot it forward and back. You can adjust that in BeamNG as well, but I like to get it nice and close just in case I were to release this car to be used for the masses. There's not an exportable gauge cluster that I really liked, so we're just going to forego that. I just kind of kept it tinted so that it's not glaring into your eyes. And then if you want, so that you don't have to see this in, your pictures and whatnot, you can just make it transparent, and that will work in Beam. Let's get to it. All right, out of automation into Beam. Let's see what this thing would drive like. So keep in mind, we've got just shy of the power of a in-era 911. I ended up putting a reverse flow muffler on this as well to quiet it down and also take some of that power out, because in my mind, the entry-level Porsche should not have the same power as the top-of-the-line Porsche. Never would. Until, today, basically. And that has hopefully tamed this thing down a little bit, but it still does have a 62 front weight bias, so that should have this thing set up to have some A, significant understeer, and B, significant lift-off oversteer, which could be fun or it could be terrifying on 70s normal tires. These are not slicks, they're not semi-slicks, they're just normal tires. I do hope that we can get the... I know you can make the steering wheels move in automation cars, but there's some coding you have to do. There's some advanced stuff you have to do to get there. Oh, there's that understeer. 20 miles an hour around this twisty mountain road. But that is kind of to be expected. Narrow, early radials, just very normal tires on this thing. I'm not looking for it to be an absolute sublime sports car, much as the 924 was not. There was a little bit of that lift off oversteer. Easy for me to say. Ooh, is that a little too quick? Nah, we're good. But we're barking those front tires. Alright. Foot to the floor. Pretty decent acceleration. As you would expect, around 140 horsepower, not much weight. It's capable. A 5-speed box would certainly help it. Keep it in the power band a little bit better. Let's see, can we get slowed down here? Ooh, not quite. Gotta adjust my brain to older school tech here. You're not gonna have all the braking power in the world. Oh, the brakes. The brakes are leaving a little bit to be desired. That is a thing where in automation it'll say, hey, you don't have enough brakes on this car. And then you get it to Beam and it's like, you have way too much brakes on this car. There might be something going on with the exporter there where we're getting an incorrect value exporting. I don't know, it's something we'll have to discuss and maybe a future touch up on the automation to BeamNG exporter. But anyway, Let's see this thing get off the line. Oh, dive into second gear there. I hope you like to hear tire squeal, because we're going to have lots of it. Alright, if there's ever a place where we're going to maybe see some of that liftoff, it's going to be down here. Looks like the understeer has taken over. I do believe we might need a little bit more front camber too. I have done no tuning. This is a first try and first impression, so I might just head back to automation now, do a little tweaking on this, and see if we can get something that's a little bit more well-behaved, especially on the brakes. Sometimes you just have to ignore what it's telling you in automation in order to get something that works a little bit better in Beam. Alright, up on the scales here with my recent changes, we are sitting at 822 rear and 1469 nice front. This is a pretty rough estimate, but I've tested this way before and it works out to be decently accurate. So we're sitting with about a 64.5, almost 65 front bias on this export, which is a little bit more dramatic than what we had in automation. However, I think that just kind of helps sell the whole point of this, so I'm going to say that that's close enough, and we will see what a very massively front engine car would handle like. Let's get up off these scales and give it a try. I made some pretty significant tweaks, including going from a medium compound tire to a sports compound tire, which, given the era this was made, is probably going to be something that's a little bit more usable. And just in getting away from that weight scale, I can already tell it is much, much better. Never forget just how much tire technology has changed. Oh yeah, this is way better already. Yep, that's actually a usable car now. It is always amazing just how little power those early 911s had. They really did take advantage of not having much weight, and this is doing the same. You can definitely tell there's just not a lot of power behind you, but you do get the impression that there is something that's sporty about it. It's not just a normal pedestrian car. I would say the lack of rear-engineness, the lack of that dramatic pendulum effect that you get on a 911 is maybe missing a bit here. I was kind of hoping that the effect of liftoff oversteer would supplement that on something that is dramatically front. I don't know that we're quite there. Maybe not on the big open track. But with these tires, it is at least a nice driving car. This is a good place to be. It's not really fair to compare it to a 911. Is it comparable to a cheap-ish sports car of the era? Yeah, I think it is. All right, let's see what we do here. Should we give it a good lift? No, it's way more stable than I kind of gave it credit for. We'll brake nice and early. Oh, there it was. There it was. It just took its sweet time to expose itself as a snap oversteer legend. But being front wheel drive, it makes it pretty manageable. Deep on those brakes. Handles it beautifully. Nah, yeah, this has transformed this car. That's all I needed, was just a little bit more grip and some camber tweaks. I've got it set nice and aggressively sprung, but also kind of softly dampened to be a road-going car. It doesn't maybe roll and pitch as much as I would expect, so it could probably go softer yet. I think as a non-real world car designer, it's always one of those things where you get in your head of like, this is sports car, this needs to do sports car things. But you forget that sports car doesn't usually sell to people looking for actual like hardcore sports cars or even race cars. They're looking for something they can use to go to Kmart and JCPenney. The Automation Test Track is a big facility, and this car might just not be quite at home here. Let's bring it out to Tail of the Dragon, a favorite of mine, and see what it's like on some twisty roads. Alright, zooping downhill here. We should be able to hit about top speed of this thing. Oh, nicely saved, thank you. Maybe not. I was hoping about 120. Oh, there's no way. No way we're gonna get slowed up in time. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Save it. Oh, if it wasn't for that pesky ramp. Alright, out here on the twisties. I'm gonna try my best to drive third person so that you can actually see the car. Drop that clutch. Let it one wheel peel with that open differential. And off we go. We'll try to keep this thing out of the trees. It's not so fast that it should be like a challenge, but that overall lack of grip from being an old car is sometimes hard for your brain to wrap around. Overall, it's a much nicer driving car than I had anticipated it being. I kind of expected it to be a total nightmare having that flat six shoved all the way into the nose of the car. Turns out, it's really not that bad. Maybe Audi was onto something with their bizarrely, extremely front-engine cars. I mean, obviously the thing they were onto was, you know, understeer, but still, maybe they were onto something. I think for an entry-level sports car, this is perfectly acceptable. It's certainly not as raw of an experience as a 911, but this little 119 has actually impressed me pretty bad. Up across the mustards. It is just kind of fun. It gives me a little bit of that Miata vibe. Obviously without the endearing rear-wheel drive approachability that a Miata would have, but kind of the same driving philosophy to it. Ooh, there's a little bit of that liftoff. But it's very controllable. I have made far worse in the liftoff oversteer department. He says, thud. I've got just a little bit too much rear braking bias, but that's actually kind of a bonus. As this car, you need to get the front end to tip in every now and again. So you can kind of use the brake pedal to help you steer a little bit. I gotta say, not bad. Not bad, sleep-deprived cone brain. I think you actually came up with something that's quite good at whatever hour of the morning that was. Alright, so doing a little research, the Porsche 924 in 1976 had a quarter-mile time of 16.7. You know, cars in the era were, you know, different than the cars we're used to today when the statistics are listed in units such as 0 to 40 kilometers an hour. That was the statistic measured for the performance of this car, which it did it in 2.3 seconds, by the way, which I guess sounds impressive. All right, let's see. Quarter mile, probably a lot of RPM. Probably could have gone for more. Can we beat 16? Can we be in the 15s? I think we can do it. Ooh, I don't know. There's 13. 14, 15. What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? 15.8. Absolute rocket ship. I mean, that's about as fast as my stock 240SX was when I first started driving. That's not so bad, especially for the year. All right, as we transition into some beauty question mark shots of the car, let me know what you think. Is this the alternative to the 924? Would you have owned a backwards 911? I am on the fence. I don't know. I've never really been completely in love with 924s. Maybe some more love for the 944, but they never did quite seem any better than the front rear offerings that were coming from Japan at the time. So maybe different could have been better. But I had fun giving my fever dream a little glimpse of reality here in Automation and BeamNG.